Stopping the paradise of white-collar crime. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of people. Well, John, we're here finally.
Hi, mate. How you going?
Yeah, good.
It's been a couple of weeks since since you put up a very provocative post, but I'm happy to say to the audience, we had a lot of questions about your cryptic message, but all I can say is that we're still on good speaking terms.
Absolutely. And I should say, just for anybody who watched that previous show, John wrote the script, right? So there was no intent on my behalf to undermine him or anything. It was all John's word. I just voiced them for him.
Fair enough. I mean, there were some people who knew that it was my handiwork, but there was other people who thought you literally threw me under the bus.
Yeah, I got a few people pretty abusive, frankly, but never mind. We are hanging in there. And look, this is a really important conversation because it really does cut to the heart of how investors are or are not protected in Australia. And that's a big question.
Yes, absolutely. So, Martin, since we've been broadcasting since 2018, we've done a whole host of very interesting topics, mainly related around the economy, also related around politics as well. Part of the reason why I thought it would be interesting for you to do that last post and talking about my secret journey is to give people a bit of an insight that we're going to cover we're going to cover this topic of financial crime because there has been some big things happening with me around financial crime over the last 12 months that we're going to talk about in the next few episodes. But it is a big topic. It's something that we haven't focused a lot of time on over the last 4 years. But when people think about in terms of the economy, in terms of generating wealth, in terms of protecting their legal risks. And obviously, when it comes to bail-in, we were talking about a type of risk to depositors and why that was important. And so now we're going to broaden the conversation about legal risk around investments and really focus on this issue of financial crime because it is a big topic. Now, in 2014, the chairman of ASIC, so the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, Greg Medcraft, went on the public record and said Australia is a paradise for white-collar crime. And that caused a huge wave of media articles to the point that the government actually had to pull him aside and say, you need to tone down these comments because that's not the international image that we want to give. And obviously, around the world, there is a perception that Australia is relatively clean country when it comes to financial crime, and there are other jurisdictions that have problems. But we do have some significant problems in this country, and we have some significant issues with the regulator in relation to financial crime. And there's been a number of reviews into ASIC, whether it's the 2014 Senate Economics References Committee inquiry into ASIC's performance, or the Royal Commission, or last year there was an inquiry into the collapse of the Sterling Income Trust that left more than 100 retirees who had lost their savings, and so this whole issue has really not been covered by particularly the alternative media in any level of sophistication or in terms of depth. So that's what we're going to focus on over the next few shows.
That's very important. Of course, there's 3 trillion sitting there in superannuation, big number. If you think about that relative to the property market, it's a big number. A lot of people are very much exposed to this, and they may have some perceptions about the way that they are protected by the way that the regulator works, etc., etc. But in practice, as we will get into this, some of those assumptions are actually quite false and quite misleading. And in fact, there are lots of examples of, frankly, people losing, their shirts when they shouldn't be losing their shirts.
Indeed. Now, one of the key points about this whole topic, Martin, is that neither one of us, believe that people shouldn't lose money in the sense that in a free market economy there is risk. Yep. Things can go up, things can go down. You can make money, and you're able to lose money. So if people lose money because of poor investment choices, well, that's something that they have to cop. But financial crime is where people lose money due to people behaving in a way that is not ethical, not legal. If people are trying to be deceitful, engaged in fraud, etc. And so that is where I think Australia, but also the United States and the UK have a particular issue. And one of the things that will come apparent over the next few shows is when the better the fraud, the more real it looks. And a whole host of investments, like a whole host of scandals across the world, where people have been sucked into something. It looks real. It has a very professional website. They give you all indications. It looks something legitimate, and the more real it looks, the more it sucks people in. And then it's only at the point of when the fraud is revealed that is where people realise they've lost. In some cases, their life savings.
Yes, and that's really a very important point, John, isn't it? Because people are actually quite clever, and the really strong fraudsters often have got whole constructions behind them in terms of brand and presence and everything, right? So it's quite hard sometimes to detect the fraudulent from the non-fraudulent until the lid comes off, and then everybody realises just how bad it is. Often many years down the track.
So before the Banking Royal Commission, during the Banking Royal Commission, and now even after the Banking Royal Commission, have been a whole host of horror stories of where people have gone to ASIC and made various complaints, both in terms of investors, but also in terms of lawyers, in terms of whistleblowers, and in a lot of cases, they find that nothing is being done. Things are allowed to fester, and then it becomes too late. And then at that point where it's too late, that's when you see catastrophic financial losses in terms of investors, and everyone's scratching their heads thinking, well, why did I have to lose my life savings when ASIC could have done a faster job and a more effective job? And so that's where late last year there was an inquiry into the collapse of the Sterling Income Trust, and from the point, what came out in that inquiry was that the WA government basically raised concerns about a particular investment product in WA largely in March of 2017, and it took ASIC 14 months to commence a formal investigation. And basically the investors had lost all their money in the process. And so, what came out, and this is actually came out in the inquiry report, was that the Labor senators on the committee basically said that even though the ASIC has multiple responsibilities and a big workload, they should have been able to alert the public and alert these investors a lot sooner. And the notion that you get told by the WA government there's something wrong and you sit on it for 14 months, that to Parliament, that was completely not acceptable.
Yeah, and if there's an issue, and the interesting question we'll look at later on is how many issues are actually escalated, how many are actually investigated, how many actually translate into real action in the real world. And the bottom line is there's a very, very small percentage that actually ever get open, exposed and dealt with. So you could say that our regulator perhaps is relatively ineffective.
Well, so now I'm glad you said that, Martin. Now, what I can reveal to the audience was that last Thursday on the 8th of September, I actually went to ASIC. I had a meeting with two of their most senior officials about their performance. So I've been working on something which we'll be talking about in terms of the next episode. So today's episode was to give people the context about financial crime and in terms of white-collar crime and fraud. And so now I can reveal that I have met with ASIC at the most senior of levels, and we'll be talking in our next show about what we discussed last week.
Yep, and so this is now getting into the quest, isn't it? And the package and all of those things that people have been hanging out for. So the good news is, watch the next show. You're going to be taken on the next stage of the journey.
Absolutely.
John, I really appreciate that. This is really such an important conversation. Thousands and thousands of investors should be listening to this. And, ahead, you're going to learn some shocking stuff.
Absolutely.